Okay, I'm going to continue I just watched the video that I made previously, and what comes now obviously is how we create our reality. And how's that even possible? How can we be the creators? How can we influence our reality? Well, the thing is, we're always a part of, that's why it's called co-creation. We're always a part of the creation. However, if it's happening unconsciously, it's just the whole time anyways, it's happening like the weather. It's happening like the weather, and we're not conscious of it. And we repeat, and so why do things repeat anyways? Why do things repeat? That they're patterns. That's what a pattern is. Well, that's what a rhythm is that there are patterns, there are repetitions. Repetitions, and chaos would be when you would look at a certain frame, space-time vantage point. You look at a certain sector, and within that sector, and then you expand it, and you don't see a pattern, you don't see a rhythm. It's total chaos. Now, chaos in actuality doesn't exist. Just like yeah, actually I don't want to see myself. So hold on. Sorry about that. Okay. Chaos doesn't exist, just like separation doesn't exist. It's an illusion. I mean, apparently it exists. Apparently. And on that apparent level, it does exist. From that limited vantage point, it is a reality. It is a reality. But as soon as you look at the bigger picture, at some point of expansion, you see perfection. You can see that part where when you zoomed in and you were at that vantage point looking at it, it was chaos. But when you look at it from the broader perspective, it's like, wow, you see how that is a pattern, a perfect pattern in the whole. It just depends on scale. Again, it depends on expansion of consciousness. It depends on the dimension that you're looking at it from, the frequency that you are vibrating at, and so forth. So we get impressed as children. We come in and our minds get conditioned, and we get traumatized, we get wounded, we get hurt, we experience negative emotion, our hearts close. It goes into the contraction. And every contraction is going to find its respective expansion. So as far as creation descends into density, that's as far as, in the same way, even farther, it will expand. And to the degree that dissension occurred, which is we go into denser and denser and denser and denser frequencies, we fall in frequency. We get contracted in our consciousness, in our perceptions, in our understanding. we fall asleep, we lose light, we get denser, we get darker. And with that, life experiences itself at ever greater densities. And it makes way for the light to awaken in ever greater densities. And of course, the more density there is, the more that the awakening, it's like the light will need more power to awaken out of a greater density. So that means ever more explosion, ever more expansion, because it requires a greater power to awaken. And of course, that greater power is there every time. It's there all the time. It's there all the time. It really is like the way that the images that I like to use is that, the greater the pressure you can make out of coal, a diamond, out of something that's pitch black, dark, you can't see through it, and it's vibrating very low, something comes out of it that is crystal clear and that lets the light through, and that vibrates, has a much higher vibration. And the other image I like to take is a spring. The more you push, the more you contract the spring, the more power it's going to have in the other direction. And so the more pressure that builds up, it's like that. So the denser it gets, the more pressure it builds up, and then the light will explode. And according to the pressure, it will expand further. So how we create our reality is life flows through us like an instrument, and in the beginning we are not conscious. It's just happening. It's just flowing through us. And the egoic mind is conditioned through the childhood, and the egoic mind is based on this sense of separation. It's a program into the mind. It's a consciousness program. It's a belief. It's a root belief. We get, because babies, they don't have that yet. They don't have the sense of separation yet. It comes because everything they are born into a morphogenetic field of based on a paradigm of separation, of that separation is a reality. And so it's unconsciously, this one is taken on. This sense of separation is taken on, and it's not questioned. And so we take on a feeling of the world, that the world is a very scary place. First of all, it's a very scary place, and we have to fight, and we have to, everyone is a potential, in a way, everyone is a potential somebody who can harm us, who can, we have to protect ourselves, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. Also, it's a mechanism. Also, and this of course is okay. There's also an agenda going on, which we'll get to that, and I always just tip on it a little bit. But it's an important part of this awakening, is that there is also an agenda going on that we don't, of course, that's being disclosed now in the time of awakening, in the time of all this light coming in. through us and from outside, both at the same time, it won't be able to, this agenda won't be able to hold itself anymore, and that's why it's being discovered now. And that has to do with our history and who we are, because it is only possible to live in a society like this where I'm just gonna mention this one example, that 1% of humans on this planet own the wealth, should I say, own 99% of the wealth? I think that's it. 1%, they own 99% of the wealth. I don't exactly know how that is, but you always hear this. You always, I mean, this is like a fact. This is not a, you know, I mean, these are things that can be traced, because we're talking about physical resources. You know, we're talking about that kind of a wealth, and you know, maybe also money, but money is not really, the real power is not in the money. That's another illusion, of course. So anyways, there you can already see, and this has been going on for a very, very long time. And I mean, you see, if you take a look at it, you see it everywhere. How is it possible? How is it possible that we have to, that we're always in survival mode, you know, that we have to do things, you know, we have to work, we have to do certain things that we don't even feel like doing in order to feed ourselves, in order to have a roof over our head. You know, when did that start? I mean, when did our lives, when did they become so, like, what are we functioning for? I mean, what are we even living for, you know? To pay taxes, to pay rent, to pay for a doctor, or to pay for that we have decent food to eat. And most people on this planet can't even do that with all of their, you know, even though they're already giving all their energy, most of their energy to this kind of work. They can't even afford that which is natural. Every animal has, you know, in nature, it's provided for. It has its home, it has its warmth, it has its food. Unless nature is tampered with. Now, we are not animals, I know. However, this system is artificial, because if it were natural, we would be all living in abundance. And this idea that we are too many people for the planet, you know, that the planet is overpopulated and we can't feed the planet, is such a lie. It is absolutely artificial. It is artificial. If we live in harmony with nature, and I'm just going to give one example, permaculture. You know, we have all the technology. We have the knowledge and the technology to live in paradise. Every single person on this planet right now, and it's already beginning. You know, it's already beginning. So that's artificially, and that's what I mean. It is artificially in place in order for what? By whom? Okay, that's a whole other story. But we still need to know that, because also our minds, so that this can happen. You know, this is not overnight. We have been the society has grown to this point of division, to this point of survival, to this point of that life is just stressful and so unnatural and so disconnected, because it has been implemented for so many years, hundreds and hundreds of years. maybe thousands of years ago it begun. But this is not the topic I want to. I just want to mention that we do live in an artificially created society. This is not the society that organically comes out of humans living together. It stems on a trauma. It stems on where there has been a group of beings that have themselves been so traumatized to the degree that they have fallen so deeply in consciousness and in density that they cannot create. They do not know how to consciously create their reality anymore, and they also cannot reproduce. They also have lost that. They have lost their creative power because they have disconnected themselves. This didn't happen consciously. It also happened through trauma with them, or bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, you know. But that's a whole other story. Where there is trauma, actually, there is trauma involved, and then of course those that inflict trauma are victims of trauma themselves. It's this domino effect, and then if we want to follow it to the root, it's very innocent, because it begins slow, falling asleep, you know, begins slow. And the very root, of course, has to be in all that is, has to be in consciousness itself, because it wants to have this experience. Like, this experience right here on this planet would not be possible if there would not have been a lot of falling, you know, a lot of falling in density and in consciousness, and this experience of awakening and of collective awakening on a whole planet, which is like, it's gonna be so awesome. It's like beyond our wildest dreams is this awakening together, healing ourselves, healing the planet together, you know, using all of our creativity. Finally, we as we come into coherence and into the rhythms of our own hearts, because that's where it all comes from our souls. We come into this alignment with our souls as we realize who we are, as we realize the illusions, the false identifications that we have been identified with beliefs of who we are. As we realize those, they fall away. That energy flows back into the mother stream, which comes through the heart, because that's where the soul lives. And as we awaken, and we then naturally do what we love to do, and we awaken to our gifts, and we blossom into our gifts. And everyone, this is happening with everyone, and it's like we all come into coherence, and everyone does what they do best, and we together, we heal this planet. It's like, whoa, oh my God. And I know that right now, and it has been for a while, but right now the thing is, it's getting worse. It looks like it's getting really, really, really bad. I mean, if you look at what's going on in the world, obviously the media anyways only shows they always have only showed the terrible things that are going on in the world. The mainstream media. It really looks like it's getting worse, and that is because we are awakening. Because these as the energies rise, everything that is lower in vibration is gonna be detoxed. It's like oil that is heavier than water. Now more and more water gets poured, or water gets poured onto the oil, and what happens? The oil swims to the top, and then the sunlight will disperse it. the sunlight, which is the pure mind, it's the pure consciousness, meeting all our own shadow, our unconscious beliefs that are rooted in separation, and of course also meeting our own unprocessed trauma. That's what's happening. As we meet our own unprocessed trauma, we are feeling all of the pain that we could not process at the time of the experience. And it's like a dammed up energy within us that is held down and that is festering. And that's why we attract, and now we come back to this, what creates our reality. We attract through that which we are conscious of, but also that we are not conscious of. All of that whole landscape of energy that is present in this energy field of my body, because my body is an energy field. It's a toroidal energy field connected to all that is. In different, through all the dimensions. We are multidimensional beings. We exist on all dimensions at the same time. And this is, of course, also now coming to be proven through quantum physics. What's in the unconscious and what's in the conscious, like attracts like. And we have the conscious mind, we have the unconscious mind, and then we have the soul stream. There where we have reconnected, or where our soul has waken up to itself, where we are aware of our true self. And we will attract, that whole energy conglomerate, that whole energy stream. All of our thoughts conscious, all of our thoughts unconscious. They create emotions. Emotions are created where the soul meets the conditioned egoic mind, where it is identified in the egoic conditioned mind. And if there is not harmony between the two, so if the egoic conditioned mind, where I'm identified with it, and of course that can only happen unconsciously, is in vibrational opposition to the soul, and it can only be in vibrational opposition to the soul if it is rooted in the belief of separation exists. So that's negative emotion, because it is in an illusion and it is in resistance to the truth. The truth is unity consciousness, and the truth knows no fear. Fear only exists out of the egoic mind, and in the body at an instinctive level where it's fight or flight. That's instinctively programmed into the body, but that's not the fear that I mean, because that's usually, it takes a certain situation for that to be triggered. But that's not the fear that I'm talking about, and that's a very healthy fear. That's the fear to keep the body alive, so that the body will do what it needs to do to keep itself safe. But that's not, that's not the kind of fear where I continue going to a job that I hate because I'm afraid I can't pay my bills otherwise. That's a whole other kind of, that fear comes from the mind, not the body. This is what I mean. So, emotions, that's how negative emotion is created, is when we're identified in the mind, rooted in the belief of separation, and that is then in disharmony, vibrating in disharmony to the soul that knows that separation is an illusion, first of all, and that knows no fear. And so if this is vibrating dissonant to this, the energy stream splits off. So in order to become aware of our truth, of who we really are, of our soul, we need to become aware of this lie, in other words, of this, where our energy stream splits off. And that's the root of all illness as well, is where the energy stream is split off. And when the energy stream is split off from the soul, it doesn't get any more energy. That part of you believes and feels it needs to get energy from outside, because it doesn't know how to get energy from inside, because it's not connected in the heart. It's not connected to the soul. It's split off, that energy stream. And you take yourself not to be a soul that is one with all, even though it has a unique form and apparently is a form unto itself. But the feeling and the knowing is that all is one, because you are one in the heart. In our heart of hearts, we are one with all life. Because, okay, that we can get into that in another video. Because that can be explained absolutely, scientifically. That can be explained too. Splits off, right? So in order for nature, always wants to come back into balance. And of course we lose and we forget about who we really are. We come into this world, we choose the descent. We choose the trauma. As a soul, we choose the trauma. We choose exactly what we want to experience, so that we can, as a soul, become more and more aware, which means as a soul be able, or as a higher vibrating being, from this vantage point out seen from this vantage point, like an energetic being, but on the level of the soul, it's not energetic. It's also a reality that is denser on that. But seeing the higher beings, the higher vibrating beings, some of them we can't even see them because we're so far apart in frequency. It's like on a different radio channel. We can't see them, but they still exist. Yeah, not gonna go there because I want to stay here. So we choose that all of this forgetting happens, and this splitting of energy happens, and this trauma happens, and this contraction happens, because what we seek is the expansion, the explosion, the expansion of consciousness, and that is, I want to say infinite, but at the same time, we are in this space vantage point where in this universe it's 15 dimensions. and then it's back to all that is. Then it's back to pure consciousness. And Godhead, I guess that's what they call Godhead. That's yeah. But also the Godhead, also all that is constantly through the form of itself expanding. Although that which it truly is, which is pure consciousness, is not in form. Or there's also that part that is not in form, and that, of course, never expands and never contracts, and always is all that is. It's just on the play level, on the form level that it can expand and contract. So, it's like in the all in this archetypical story of the lost son, the archetypical story of the son, it's usually the son, in our lore, leaves home, goes out into the world, like fairy tales, goes out into the world, experiences all these things, and at some point he comes back home and has learned. And he's learned from all the terrible things that happened to him, and they make him into who he is. And he gets all these gifts from all these terrible things that happened to him. And so, at some point in life, when the soul has gathered enough contraction, it's ready to reintegrate. And that's why these so-called negative things keep happening to us, because it is each time a repetition of the same trauma that is still unconscious, that we want to reintegrate into our field, all that energy that we could not, that was too much, it was too painful, where we dissociate in order to survive, because we can't handle it. All of that has to be felt consciously. Just felt, so that the energy stream that is split off, that is kept in the unconscious, can come back into the mother stream. And so you can see everything that happens, all the negative things, is for you to have another opportunity, to bring it back home. Bring yourself back home. To reintegrate yourself, to come closer to yourself. And all that wants to happen is that you feel those feelings inside of yourself, because these things happen, they're attracted to what's in the unconscious, to the trauma that's in the unconscious, to that vibration that is contracted in your body. And it comes and it triggers that, it triggers the negative emotion. And then what the way that we're wired is like, ooh, this is a bad thing happening to me, I don't want this happening to me, this is awful. And you go into resistance and you fight it, and so forth. The real way to fight it, the real way to heal this and to dissolve this and to change this, is to turn, not to fight out here, not to fight at all, but to turn to your emotions, to turn inside. Turn inside, because out there is just the trigger, it's just the mirroring of what's inside here. And so when negative emotion is triggered, it is the golden opportunity for healing. Right there in that moment, you just feel it, and it's what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body. And what dissolves the pain body is presence. Present awareness is feeling it. But from this present awareness, feeling it, you will only be able to feel it if you're not at the same time identified as the victim in a story. If you continue that story and you tell everyone that story as a way to, which is fine, which is absolutely fine, when that happens, absolutely fine. But what really wants to happen is that the negative emotions triggered are felt, and we cannot feel them while at the same time we are entertaining this story in our minds where we are the protagonist and we are the victim, because then our energy is in the movie. It's not with us, it's not in our feeling, in our body. And that's how we heal it, is just by sitting with that actual sensation of the emotion. And we just hold it like a baby. And that's what dissolves the pain body. That's what dissolves this unconscious trauma. And then as this shadow, as this gets reintegrated back into the mother stream, the mother stream becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And everything that is in here, that's what is being mirrored outside. And that's how we co-create the weather, so to speak, our reality. We become aware of who we are. We become aware of ourselves. We become aware of our mind. We become aware of what our emotions are saying. Negative emotion always is not coming from the soul, is identified with the egoic mind, identified with a story rooted in separation. And illness, any kind of illness, any kind of sickness, is when this flow, because emotions need to flow. Emotions are water, they need to flow. If they cannot flow, then they get foul. And then just like any natural landscape, things go bad, things start to decompose, and that would be illness in the body. The body has to, at some point, it takes over, it takes on whatever it is that is in the landscape of emotions, and that is unconscious, and that is negative. Not rooted in the soul, not rooted in who we really are, not rooted in truth, in the unity of all life, not rooted in God. It's where we do not feel ourselves. It's where we have kept a part of us apart from us. Not as us, but apart from us, because we don't want to feel it. It's too painful. So as we feel our own pain, we bring those parts that we have kept separate from us back home, back to our hearts, back to our chest, back like a lost baby, a lost part of ourselves that is us. And as we are becoming then more aligned with our mother stream, with our soul, that is our true happiness. The soul is who we are, and it chooses every experience. And so our true happiness is the harmony with the soul, is it being in the flow with the soul. And that's what Abraham Hicks calls the vortex, which it is a vortex. I mean, our energy bodies, I will show pictures, they are a huge vortex. And so that which the soul imagines, what it wants to bring through itself into this world. Oops. And we have to be, to be healers, we have to be wounded first. There is no healer that hasn't been wounded. No true healer that hasn't been wounded. That's why Jesus was so powerful. Has such a powerful light. Because, yeah. It takes that. It takes to be wounded. It takes negative experience. It takes painful experience to be able to have compassion. If you don't know what that is, how are you going to be able to have compassion? I mean, I guess from the heart you just have compassion, even if someone is going through, you see them suffering and they're going through something that you can't even fathom. Okay. However, if you haven't suffered yourself, then you won't even be able to know what suffering is. That's what I mean. So this coming from the unconscious creating our reality through us, or our reality gets created through us unconsciously. We come into the conscious creation, which is more like coming into the realization that everything is happening for you, because it's happening from the soul for the soul. So even all the negative things that are happening are to wake you up to them, to your own unconscious, to your own shadow. That's why they're happening. To wake you up to your own pain that you have been keeping away from yourself, to your own pain body that wants to come back home to you. It's you that wants to come back home to you. And so as a whole being, as a healed being, we come more and more, as we are approaching, as we are more and more approaching this coherence, which is coming into the rhythm of our own hearts, not anymore. Because as these parts are reintegrated, also the hunger and the need to be fed energetically, from the outside, also from love. Because as we have our hearts closed, we're so hungry for love, and if we're coming from that place of the egoic mind that is rooted in separation, not the egoic mind that is the healthy egoic mind, that is in the back seat, it knows its place, it knows its program that serves the soul. That's the wonderful egoic mind. That's the fun egoic mind. That's what it's made for. But it's also made for so that we can have this experience of descent, and of contraction and of suffering and so forth. For sure. Then the experience is more, everything that is coming is coming for me. And so as we see this, we can trust more and more and more and more in life. We can just trust in life. And even if there's something where we're going like, oh, I hope it doesn't go this way, and oh, I really wanted to go this way, it's still rooted in this trust that either way it will be beyond what I can imagine right now, because the soul wants to expand. It wants to experience, always expand in love, expansion in love, in love, in love, in love. But in order to expand in love, we first have to contract in love. We first have to close our hearts and have that experience of heartbreak and of sadness and of all negative emotion. So as we say we become conscious creators, it's more that we become conscious of the creation flowing through us and the perfection of it, and that we actually choose. We couldn't even make up a better choice than what is coming through us to us. We realize that this is the highest choice all the time. And as we realize, or as we notice us making poor choices, or making choices that are, let's say, coming from the egoic separate mind and not from the soul, choices that we regret, choices that feel bad, and so forth, we come to see as we wake up that even those were the best choices at the time, because those were the choices needed for this part of where we're coming from, an illusion, from the identification with the egoic mind, to become aware of it. We had to have this painful experience of coming from that place and then receiving the outcome of it, the painful outcome of it, so that we begin to question, so that we begin in our suffering, that will make us begin to turn inward towards ourselves, because that's the only way to heal our suffering, to stop our suffering, to stop this constant cycle of recreating and more and more and more and more suffering, this endless cycle of suffering. The only way it can't be done with anything out there, nothing out there, nothing out there. The only way is by turning inward. And as we turn inward to ourselves and are willing to open up to ourselves and are ready to want to learn or remember how to love ourselves, how to accept ourselves, that is then how we come into more and more coherence with who we really are, our mother stream, the harmony stream with God, because the soul is in harmony with all creation, with God, with that, what all is, with all life. The soul is in harmony with that. Except for the fallen ones, and that's, those are the demonic, the fallen souls. They have fallen so deep to the degree that even on that dimension they're fallen. But we're not going to go there any further. I have talked about them quite a bit. So, if we go back to about the, many people maybe are, they worry about getting sick or about bad things happening to them. But it was really coming from, because there are many people that they worry about getting sick, or if you are ill. First of all, we also have to know that the whole idea we have about health that we grew up in this paradigm is part of the agenda. That has been artificially, we have been kept from the truth of who we are, how our bodies work. Like still in the Ayurvedic system and in the ancient Chinese medicine, they still have a lot of knowledge about how it all is interconnected and how they don't come from a mechanistic worldview where it's just about chunks of flesh that are floating in space and they're not interconnected, and they still understanding that it's consciousness incarnate, and that every single ailment, no matter what it is has a respective belief system to it, has some kind of a trauma. It's based on some kind of a trauma that happened, and that has been pushed into the unconscious, and now at some point, if it's not reintegrated, then the body has to, then it will be manifest in the body. And then because they understand this whole connection, they also know how to support the body from a physical standpoint, be it herbs or be it energetic healing, or be it needles or whatever. But what they do is they do not manipulate, because that's dumb. That's what allopathic Western modern medicine is all about, manipulation, because they do not recognize, because it has been suppressed consciously, that it is part of an agenda, because it is so it has to go all the way back to a world view that is mechanistic, and that's just not reality. Reality is not a machine. And that's why I love quantum physics, because it just shows on the hardest science, it shows that all is made out of conscious awareness. All is made out of consciousness. All is perfection. It's like all this. It's intelligence beyond anything we could ever comprehend. So they know these like for Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, they still have knowledge how to support. That's their system. They support the body in healing itself because they understand only your body can heal itself. No other body can heal you. It can only support you in your healing, or make it harder for you to heal. So in realizing how our reality gets created, it's like we cannot go wrong, even if we make the worst mistake. Make the worst mistake, it's because we have an emotional reaction to that. And that emotional reaction, that emotion was already there before you made the mistake. The mistake is only to trigger it and to finally sit with that part in yourself. It's all the regurgitation of what we have assembled and collected in our childhood. And as we feel those negative emotions from that mistake, that's how it gets reconciled. That's how it gets healed. And of course we are sorry. And of course we think, how could I have done that? How did I couldn't see that? And so forth. And then we simply, as we feel this, and as we understand how this works, who we are, and why we are here, we can come to a place of just holding it, accepting it as our path of growth, as our path of awakening, and that's how reconciliation happens. And then when that energy is integrated into our mother soul stream, soul energy stream, it will simply not show up. It just won't. It cannot show up anymore as a split off negative. Now we are creating out of the conscious, out of being conscious. And that's why it's called conscious creators. And if we as conscious creators say, ooh, I would love to experience this, then we're not coming from a place of, if it goes differently, oh, I don't want it to go differently. We're not coming from a place of having to have it in a certain way, because we're not coming from fear. We're not coming from manipulation, wanting to manipulate. No, because we're coming from the awareness that this is the divine flowing through us, and it couldn't. It's like my mind couldn't even imagine such a scenario. How great it could be, but it very much can pick up on it and say, whoa, this is awesome. I can start to see where this is going, and it can. The more we rest in trust and we lean back and let God flow through us, let our soul flow, because our soul is in the awareness of the oneness with God. It is the God spark. It is the quantum of light. The quantum light that is God within us. All light is God, all form is God anyways, but it's only that as this mechanism of egoic mind, this program is built into our minds through trauma initially. It is only that will give the illusion and the sense that we are something else, that we are not God. Okay. I think that's enough for now.